Hi, everyone. I'm Marge Breya, and I head up Leadspace, and I'm joined by Laurie Cremona Wagner from Pure Storage. Hi. So today what we're going to do is we're going to spend about 20 minutes going over a project that we've been working together on, and it's been very rewarding, and we wanted to share best practices, et cetera. And it's all about how to go after a target selection for global ABM and territories. So very interesting project, and it's running live now. So lots to share here. So over to you, Lori.
Thanks, Marge. Hi, everyone. I'm Laurie Cremona Wagner, and I lead marketing strategy and operations for Pure Storage. And Pure is last year, our total fiscal year revenue was 2.8 billion. We're growing very fast, taking market share very fast at a 25% growth rate in the storage market. And we have about 12,500 customers, and most proud of our NPS score, which I know it sounds unheard of, but is 82 because our products are so intuitive and simple and easy to use and save so much energy. And we are the leaders in storage platforms. So let's keep going on what we're trying to do here. So the opportunity for Pure is that we are implementing the buying group demand funnel. And as everyone knows, the buying group demand funnel, the demand unit waterfall, as it used to be called, starts with the target accounts. And so it's most important that we understand who the best target accounts are, and we can segment them and align our go-to-market efforts. So in order to help the business understand why this is so important, we created this visual to show the total addressable market for the entire account represents the most opportunity for Pure. And if we look at the wallet share in those accounts, we can obviously the wallet size represented by opportunity is the total wallet size, but we need to increase the wallet share. So how much of the Pure's annual revenue are we actually able to capture versus the account total addressable market? And that will lead to increased bookings. Now, this is really intuitive, but as you all know, when you do change management, what we're trying to help people understand is that targeting the highest propensity accounts and continuing to expand in those accounts is the most important thing that we can do as a company and get everyone aligned so that people understand why we're going through this extensive effort to align on target accounts, because it is a big effort.
You bet.
To keep moving here, the challenges that we really needed to address in terms of driving alignment across all of Pure is that we were really focusing hard on the revenue of the accounts and segmenting the accounts in terms of revenue only and not taking into account, for example, things like the industry, which can drive much higher spend, especially on storage, than just revenue alone. The other thing is that we hadn't done a refresh in a few years, and we needed to do an overall refresh of all the data. Now, this timing ended up perfect for us because we're also implementing a new account database. So the time for the refresh was just perfect. It was a perfect time to take a step back, to work with the lines of business and do a refresh overall on what the total account opportunity was for Pure, and then all align on what those accounts would be. So looking back at the data and almost starting from scratch. And then number three, driving that alignment across Pure. So working with the lines of business, with sales ops, with everyone who's putting the territories together. A lot of opportunity for getting everyone aligned and focused on the go-to-market strategy by segment and aligning that based on the new account data. So if we keep moving here was the plan. So in Q3 of last year, the goal was to build the foundational capabilities in the analysis, which we're about to show you, And then we wanted to make sure that we refine the methodology and the account framework for SAM and TAM, that we acquired the data and that we started pressure testing it. And then we moved into operationalization. So, how are we going to move that account TAM data into all our different systems? How are we going to start using that to go to market differently? And then in Q2, implement that segmentation strategy and align and continue to refine the methodology, especially in the top accounts where um, it's really important to gain agreement that that wallet size is the right wallet size so that we can start looking really carefully at the share of wallet and how to grow. So if we keep moving, Marge, what is
Yeah.
Tam, Sam, and Sam?
So TAM, SAM, and SOM. These acronyms are shared a lot in many different ways. TAM is literally what is the total available market. So when you think about it, in the way we're looking at here is it's not just all of the accounts that you have in your CRM. It's actually all of the accounts that are available worldwide. Because as you know, sometimes CRMs and databases grow pretty organically, as opposed to start with everything in the world. So what is the total available market? Lots of ways to align with companies like Gartner data or IDC data or other things like that. In this case, we use Gartner data. And then the SAM is what is serviceable. So what is your kind of stuff that you can sell? Not just a whole, for example, storage market, but is there a subsegment of the market that is ideally suited for you today? In the future, it could expand or contract, but it's what can you service now? And then serviceable obtainable market, which is the realistic market share. And that can vary by territory and region, depending on the resources you have, all kinds of things that could happen there. From an approach standpoint, how do you actually think about TAM and SAM globally? And this was a treat. It was the first time, at least, that Laurie and I have been able to work together and with her team on literally, first of all, starting with how many companies are there actually in the world that are that you can go after. Now, again, it's in this case we weren't focusing on every like super small micro business, mom and pop shops or anything, but folks that would be actually in the market or in the zone for buying storage and significant storage opportunity. How do you look at, first of all, is this account more attractive than this account? And so you're going to see a calculation in a little bit that relies on various firmographics that will go ahead and drive the calculation for that relative account opportunity. Then there's lots of things that come into it in terms of how do you actually measure that size. For example, in the government, many folks would naturally say, "Oh, wait a minute, we're going to do revenue worldwide," but in the government, it's very sporadic on whether tax or other revenues are shared globally. So, do you view a relative size by employee count or revenue, et cetera, like that? How does it change by industry? Laurie already mentioned that many industries are far more likely to have heavy storage investments than others. And what can you look at from an attractiveness criteria that would say this is less interesting? Because sometimes it's more important also to know who not to focus on than who to focus on, because the whole idea is bumper lanes for sales and marketing. So this just gives you a quick view on like looking at how many companies there are in the world. So we started with about 231 million companies, and with about 8.5 billion what's called global ultimates, meaning these are the companies that have complex corporate structures that you needed to look at in terms of, you don't want to double count your TAM or things like that by looking at various divisions that might have different names or things like that. So we started, first of all, with how many companies are in the world and how to segment them into proper categories. So you knew families, et cetera. Example, U.S. federal government. At that time, we had 66,000 entities that were trackable when we first started this project. We're now at 69,000. So entities change every year, all of that kind of good stuff. So you'll see here are all the various entities that roll up into the US federal government, and then how to, look at which one's a global ultimate, rank and all of that kind of good stuff.
Okay, so how did we calculate the account opportunity? So, like Marge showed you, we started with those 200 million accounts, and then we decided that the best way to look at this was to take the account revenue, which is obviously a really important input, no matter what, if you have it for those companies that actually have revenue, not the public companies. And we looked at the revenue by industry. I'm sorry, the IT spend by industry. So it turns out that Gartner publishes the IT spend as a percentage of revenue based on the industry NAICS and SIC codes. We also have available to us the storage infrastructure spend as a percentage of the IT spend based on the industry codes. And that gets us to the total addressable market. We then worked really closely with the engineering team, with the product management, product marketing team, and our CTO to determine what percentage of that total addressable market was actually serviceable for Pure. And this was a really, really important effort because this gets us to and important alignment to gain because this gets us to, like we said, that service addressable market, which essentially creates a wallet size for us so that we can start looking at the annual spend and figuring out what our share of wallet is. So that's where we landed, was on the service addressable market. In order to get to SOM, that's where we start looking at, for example, geographies and specific countries that we want to either play in, not play in, or prioritize or deprioritize. So this is the methodology that we used, and it was really important that we aligned on this across the organization so that before we started crunching through data on these millions of accounts, we had agreement on the approach. So then we started running the numbers. So let's start looking at that. The way that we ran these numbers was in terms of account family. So this was one of the most important concepts that we needed to gain everyone's understanding on before we started. So what is the makeup of an account family, and therefore the level at which we're going to calculate that TAM and that SAM? So what we came up with together is that we'll look at these global units. So these are the headquarters accounts that have children under them. And the term global ultimate might sound familiar to you. So we looked at those accounts that actually had a global ultimate flag, and then all the accounts underneath them inherit that TAM segmentation. So if the headquarters account total revenue multiplied by the IT spend and multiplied by the storage spend comes out to $5 million a year, for example, then every account in that family falls into that TAM segment, that level of prioritization. We also looked at the single sites. The single sites are accounts that don't have a children or a parent. They don't have a global ultimate flag. They might be what's called a domestic ultimate or just at the site level. And we looked at the single sites as well. So that helped us understand what the total number of headquarters and single sites were, and how many we should actually consider in terms of families and single sites. And we were able to hone that down pretty quickly to a smaller percentage that we could actually work with. So if we keep going, Marge, do you want to talk about how that actually
Work
looks and
again.
how that looks for an account?
Sure. And so this just gives you an example. We had presented this when we were in Texas, so we decided to go ahead and just take the state of Texas. So we're not singling out one account, but this is what we had given as an example. So for example, the state of Texas here is part of an overall TAM that Pure has. And you can see here that the TAM for the state of Texas was calculated out at about $44 million. And that came from knowing, in this case, the number of employees Texas has and doing a calculation on the industry, et cetera, associated with it. And so what you can see is there's many, many different entities, and this is just a screenshot of a subset of it for the family size. And then we could look at a full hierarchy, family tree, et cetera, of Texas.
Okay. So once we had the TAM and the SAM for all the accounts that we were considering, we needed to start understanding what the breakpoints are in terms of investment. And so what we did, we started working with the data science team and we ran an analysis of variance. We used actual statistical tools to look at the historical purchase data versus the TAM to understand what the clusters of accounts actually was so that we could start looking at investment from all of the different go-to-market teams. So here you can see an example of how those clusters fell. And this was really powerful. The statistical analysis was really powerful because it helps remove all of that more subjective decision making around how territories and resources should be assigned.
Yeah, and when you think about it, guys, what we're really talking about here is putting a couple of different segmentation categories, like as an example, enterprise versus commercial versus small and medium business or other things, right? So you're looking at how you're going to resource people, marketing spend, et cetera there. So very practical, but very cool in terms of how these guys approached it.
Yeah, and it also really helped illustrate why it was so important to focus in those higher TAM accounts because that is where the bookings come from. So that really helped the organization move forward in terms of strategy. So it takes a village. We need to gain alignment across all of Pure Storage. The sponsors are the line of business leaders and our chief operating officer. And the project leaders were really marketing and sales together. The working team was made up of many different teams across the organization. So not only marketing ops and go-to-market data science, but the market intelligence, the product management, the integrated operations, business intelligence group, sales planning, analyst relations, and of course, our Leadspace consulting team. And then we worked really closely with our CTO, our analyst relations team, and then the working team included the lines of business so that as we were working through this, we could move into that next step that you saw, operationalization, really smoothly because we'd already mobilized the commitment of the organizations across Pure. So TAM became a way of thinking for us really naturally and a term that people adopted really organically and is just now part of our vernacular and the way that we speak of accounts. So from a change management standpoint, it was really important to start from day one with involvement from every team that was going to use this downstream.
Yeah. And so guys, if you're interested in more about that, the Change Acceleration Program is a thing, right? And look it up online. It's called CAP. And Laurie's an expert in it. I was trained in it as well when we were working together years ago. And so it's a great way to create shared vision and get that organic alignment. And again, Laurie is an expert in this area. So what's next for what we're doing? So we've been now in our, we're now in the operationalization and honing stage. We're working together to have the entire lead flow management system aligned around TAM as well. So that it's not only the flow coming in, but the efforts going out. And so we're aligning by people and kind of their categorization associated with each account. And so that's great that we've been working together on that. And then, finally, how do we wrap it up on, what did we learn and what advice would we give all of you?
Okay, so what advice would we give? I think we talked about how important it is to look at all the companies in the world so that people aren't onesie twosie picking the accounts and cherry picking the accounts that matter to them. We can say we took a step back, we looked at all the companies that existed. CRM systems can be really limited as to the accounts that are included there based on buyers that have engaged in the past or buyers that are part of territories today. So really important that we took a step back from the CRM data and expanded our aperture to figure out from scratch what we could actually accomplish if we looked at opportunity. Secondly, it was really important that we pressure tested the TAM model against key accounts and the revenue that we had already captured from these accounts. So there were a lot of efforts, there was a lot of time spent looking into, for example, specific territories to see what the TAM model effect would have, how accounts would move, and whether the TAM model was correct based on the revenue. Now, because that we're looking at both SAM and TAM, it's really important when we are evaluating this with the organization that we explain that the SAM is the addressable market, but there are accounts, some of those top accounts that it's possible to capture more of the TAM in the account. So important to have conversations, important to look at actual real data. And then Marge, you want to talk to us about pressure testing against the category forecasts?
Sure. So when we're looking at it, part of what we have to do also is align verticals with industry spend on, for example, storage in this case, to also the achieved revenue in the prior year, et cetera. Because what you're trying to get a feel for is, does the overall category, meaning a $51 billion TAM, make sense against a larger storage market forecast, make sense against how the geographic split is, the industry split is, et cetera. And so we had a lot of sessions just to go back and forth and say, okay, here's what the data is saying, and gut check. Does this make sense from a segmentation standpoint? And you can find things that are unusual and challenge the way you think about that calculation. And we tweaked a few things as we went along.
Yeah. And then number four, I think the big opportunity here is to use the model to align all the go-to-market teams and resources. So that's a big, big body of work that you can see from our timeline is underway. This makes it a lot easier to align across teams on targets and who should do what, target accounts and who should do what. And then lastly, alignment across sales and marketing. So we start all our efforts in marketing operations that we can in partnership with sales because we need to make sure that everything that we do affects sales positively downstream. So never shortcut this, especially in terms of TAM and SAM and account opportunity, because the sales team is the team that has to do the most work in terms of resources and alignment. And you also want to make sure that from a marketing perspective, that any opportunities that you drive in these accounts are the most important accounts from a sales perspective, from a sales point of view. So most important in terms of change management and in terms of effectiveness that you start and partner with sales in this effort.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks, Laurie, for sharing the journey so far. And, obviously it was a pleasure working with you and the team and continuing to work with you guys. So thanks very much.
Thank you for all your help. It was wonderful to work with you and with your team on this, and thank you for the impact you've had
Cool.
on.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. And
Thank
see
you.
you next time.